I literally had something hit me upside the head that changed my perspective about things. But you know what? I just was like, I'm out. I can't do this. This isn't gonna happen. I wasn't ready to do it anymore, and I just wanted to get out. So you know what I did? I called a broker, told him that I wanted to sell the boat. Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast made by an everyday sailor for everyday sailors. We talk everything from day sailing to racing to cruising to camping out on your boat and everything in between. It's time now to raise the sails. Ahoy, sailors, and welcome to episode 15 of the Passages from the Heart podcast. Today's topic: should I sell the boat? Something I think we all have thought about from time to time, and as they say, the happiest day of boat ownership is when you buy the boat, and the second happiest day is when you sell it. Well, I don't agree with that, but we will get into the whole meat of the topic in just a bit. I want to, first of all, again, welcome you to this episode and show, and I am your host, Shell Hart, yours truly here at the mic, and I want to take a moment to thank all of you so very much for supporting this podcast. A little over a year and a half ago, actually, hard to believe, I started this project with the goal of keeping myself active in the world of sailing when my boat was on the hard for the off season. I just couldn't stand to be without sailing somewhere in the forefront of my mind between the months of basically November through April in my neck of the woods. So that's how this whole project was born, just from a love of sailing. And also, second most importantly, is to connect with all of you out there. And I could not be more tickled to see how the numbers and subscribership are growing. And I'll be honest, I'm not really all about that sort of thing. I do not monetize. So for me, I don't know, it's not like I'm using this sort of platform to earn income. But what I am using it for is to, share what I know, which isn't a whole lot, I admit, but I do know some things. And more importantly, I want to connect with you guys out there. I want to talk to other sailors. I want to talk to people who are just getting started. I want to talk to people who have decades of experience and everybody in between. Because really, I think that connection is what makes, doing this all the worthwhile. So seeing those numbers grow in the subscribers just makes me feel like, hey, maybe something's going right here. So yeah, thank you so much, you guys. It just really means the world to me to have your support. I got to thinking with this last episode that I did, it was a really cool episode where I interviewed a really special sailor, a man who is participating in the 2025 Mini Globe Race, the first race of its kind. I interviewed Josh Cayley aboard his, it's a little 19.02 foot, or as really more what they say, a 5.8 meter sailboat called Skookum, hand built out of plywood. Josh made the boat all himself. It took him over 2 years to finish the project. But the whole point of this race is these folks that are participating have these homemade plywood sailboats that they've built that are basically 19 feet long. And guess what? They're sailing them around the world. Now, they're not doing it nonstop. There are different legs of the race. And if you caught the last episode, we briefly, I think, talked about some of those legs. And when I caught up with Josh, he had just wrapped up leg one, where he had departed from Antigua. I hope I'm saying that right this time, since I mispronounced it I don't even know, a multitude of times in my last episode. And the fleet sailed to Panama. And then not that long ago, I think late March, the fleet set off again on leg 2. And the journey this time is sailing from Panama to French Polynesia. And I'm not sure which island they're stopping at, but it's basically going to be sort of what they call a leg break. So it's not the whole leg 2 from Panama to French Polynesia, but just sort of a regroup point, if you will. And the actual end of leg 2 will be once the fleet arrives in Fiji, which I believe is scheduled sometime for either late June or maybe early July. So what you can do if you're interested in following along with the progress of the fleet as they are on this voyage from Panama to French Polynesia, because it's still underway. 14 sailboats, 15 altogether, but I believe one has dropped out officially as an entrant. And there's also another sailboat, a gentleman, Captain Coconut, as he goes by. He's not officially in the race, but he is there as a sort of a safety measure, if you will, just, keeping track to make sure everybody's okay. And I guess if there's something that were to come up, he could be a boat that could be diverted for assistance. Captain Coconut was in 2 Golden Globe races, I think 2018 and 2022. And if you're interested, again, getting back to how you can keep in touch with all of that, there is, of course, the ALMA Class Globe 580 YouTube channel, where Don McIntyre, the gentleman who basically founded and organized this event, as well as the Ocean Globe Race and the Golden Globe Race, he does pretty much, I'd say, daily updates on the tracker to show where everybody in the fleet is positioned out in the Pacific Ocean. You can also download an app called YB Races, which I want to do that. I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet myself. But definitely check out all of that. And it's really, like I said, it to me just blows my mind, as I mentioned in my last podcast, that these people are doing what they're doing in these boats. It's pretty amazing to me. The other thing I want to tell you about that I'm excited about is there are 2 new awesome books out. I can't wait to read them. I've heard about these books through some of the sailing podcasts that I listen to, one of which is Paul Trammell's Offshore Sailing and Cruising podcast. And most recently, I heard episode number 245, in which he was reading some excerpts from this book that was written by an entrant in the 2018 and 2022 Golden Globe races, the Finnish skipper by the name of Tapio, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, Lehtinen, I believe. And in 2022, his sailboat, Asteria was her name, he lost her during the race. So the book is titled The Last Voyage of Asteria, and it's actually co-written by Paul Trammell, the same gentleman whose podcast I had been listening to, where I learned about the book. So I can't wait to check that book out. Definitely take a look at that. I think it's going to be dropping on Amazon. I think he said on April 5th, which is tomorrow, because today is April 4th. And then another book that's just recently come out is a book by Lin Pardey. She was formerly married to Larry Pardey, and the two of them had decades of adventures of double-handing around the world multiple times in 2 different vessels that they built themselves, wooden sailboats that they built themselves. So this is her latest book that was just released, and that book is called Passages, Cape Horn, and Beyond. And you can learn more about this particular book with Lin's interviews on 2 different podcasts. One, again, is the Paul Trammell Offshore Sailing and Cruising podcast, and she's featured on episode number 234 with her partner, David Hay. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I think it's Haigh. And that episode aired on, I believe, January 13th of 2025, and it's episode, again, number 234. She was also featured on the Liveaboard Sailing podcast, season 6, episode 8, which was posted on March 12th of this year. So yeah, definitely check out those new books. I can't wait to get a hold of them myself because I definitely just devour books like that. And as a matter of fact, if you're interested about other titles, sailing books, fiction and nonfiction, I have a link on my podcast that's called Great Reads, www.passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com. And again, the link is Great Reads. And I have several books listed by title and author that maybe you might want to take a look at and see if anything, piques your interest to check out, because everything I read, absolutely stellar. And I just love increasing the library more where sailing books are concerned, for sure. Okay, so let's get into the heart of this podcast. This is a really tough one for me. And I'll admit, I'm also pretty embarrassed about this. But there's nothing like honesty to help us, not only with other people, but most importantly with ourselves, to help us try to navigate through life's challenges. And this is something that definitely is a challenge for me. So you may remember last summer, I had an epiphany which was actually started by something very simple. And that was that my husband and I, the first mate, we had our first overnight aboard our sailboat called Charm, who is a 2013 Com-Pac 23. Well, it was a rather sleepless night for many reasons, but probably the most important reasons is that we both felt pretty cramped. And I've talked with other Com-Pac 23 owners who are friends of mine, and they would say quite the opposite, that they feel like there's plenty of room and, they didn't feel cramped whatsoever. I believe one of my friends is a little over 6 feet, so he felt like there was plenty of room for him as far as the length of the V-berth and whatnot. But for us, we definitely were having some feelings of things being a bit too close for comfort. And for the first time in my life ever, which is really shocked me, I felt claustrophobic on the boat. I've never felt that way on a boat. I grew up sailing and sleeping on the boat in a quarter berth on the starboard side. For many years, that was my little cubby, and I felt all cozy and warm and just loved it. Listening to the hull where the water was lapping up against it was like, a lullaby of sorts. So this really surprised me. And that next morning when we woke up, the first mate basically expressed the same thing, similar concerns. And we just kind of got on this whole, let's find a bigger boat kick. So we spent 5 trips that we made up in Lake Superior or on Lake Superior boat shopping. And a lot of the videos from last season on my YouTube channel chronicle that journey. So I'll just, pare it down to the basic components here. We had made an offer on one boat on a Toshiba 31 that didn't work out. I was really bummed because I just loved that boat. It's a Robert Perry design, really classic looking boat. And then just out of serendipity, we happened to see a Com-Pac 25, which I loved, but it had an outboard engine, and the lines to the outboard looked pretty decrepit and needing to be replaced. And when I reached out to Com-Pac, I talked to Jerry Hutchins, one of the brothers who owns and runs the business, and very, very sadly passed away earlier this year, which is heartbreaking. I lost my second sailing mentor, Keith Scott of the Sailboat Company being one as well, who passed last April, almost a year ago. Anyway, I digress. So, Jerry basically had told me back at the time when I had this conversation about the outboard engine lines and how I could go about replacing them. Basically, everything was situated in the starboard aft end of the boat underneath the cockpit bench, and you would have to take out the galley companionway steps and remove a small bulkhead that separated the fuel tank from the rest of the quarter berth. It would actually be the galley, not the quarter berth on that side. The galley is on the starboard side in that area of the boat. So it just sounded like way more than I wanted to deal with. So it wasn't too surprising that when I found another Com-Pac 25 with an inboard engine, I thought, okay, this is something different. And I really wasn't sure that the inboard engine was the way that I wanted to go. But our experiences sailing last summer on Lake Superior just sort of awakened this part of myself that was like, it's do or die time. And what I mean by that is that, I have felt, and I think my childhood sailing friend that I recently spoke with phrased it perfectly. He said, you've outgrown that lake. And he's referring to the inland lake that we both grew sailing up on back in the 70s and the 80s. And then, that I, 32 years later, started sailing on again as an adult. And I thought about that. This is my 5th season. And he's right. I do feel like as much as I love the lake, it's not the same as it was when I was a kid. And I can't expect things to be the same as they were when I was a kid. That's just not how life works. So as precious as those memories are and how special that lake is to me, I felt that I really wasn't having opportunities to grow as a sailor. And so the appeal of going to Lake Superior to me and keeping a boat up there started to grow on me, especially when one of the brokers we were working with had suggested, hey, well, why don't you just keep the boat here? A lot of people that keep their boats here come from all over, all these different states surrounding Lake Superior. People are, coming in to enjoy the lake during the season. And so we thought, well, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we should do that. So the idea of buying this boat, this Com-Pac 25 with the inboard engine, with systems on board that were far more robust than any boat that I've had up to this point, barring a boat that I had called Nomos, another Com-Pac 23, who had been outfitted extensively for coastal cruising. But that was a few years ago when I had that boat, and I wasn't ready for that kind of a boat at that point. So I ended up finding a new captain for her. But fast forward 3 years later to last summer, and I felt like this is something we got to do. This is something I have to do. I don't know what it was, but there was just this desire that I just had to get a boat and keep it up on Lake Superior. And the reason why I felt that I could do that is because I thought, well, there's plenty of sailboats up here. There's access to professional help where I can work with riggers or mechanics to help me with the diesel engine if I should need it. It just all seemed to make perfect sense to me. So we made the plan after we bought the boat to keep this boat at a marina up there. I had asked about having some of these repairs done from the survey results that said, hey, these are some things that might be, projects you want to consider addressing before you splash next season. So the marina is all like, yeah, cool, we can help with this. And we even have, you can just even like have us come work with you by your side as sort of an apprentice if you want to even do that so you can learn more. And I was totally into that too, because I'm thinking this is a great way to learn and expand my horizons, right? This is what I want to do. Well, November, December, January, February, and March have all come and gone. And throughout that entire time, I always checked in at least once, twice, if not 3 times a month, just as a little, hey, what's going on with the repair list? Where are we? And, how I got to kind of get my schedule lined up for this summer so I know when to take work off so I can come work on the boat and want to, coordinate all of that with you folks up that way. And basically each time I would call or email, I was told, we'll get back to you. And I'm thinking, every time it's just like, okay, I got to be the patient person. I don't want to be that pushy customer that's a pain in the butt. So I just sort of acquiesced and thought, well, this will eventually work out. But truth be told, I was nervous. I was very nervous. And the reason why is because I had hired Jerome Rand of Sailing into Oblivion, which I think I mentioned him many times. So if you haven't checked him out, you gotta check him out. Jerome Rand has a business called Sailing into Oblivion, which he does, like with me, for example, works as a consultant. So I check in with him about boat projects and boat questions and even life lesson sorts of things. He does coaching. He comes out to your boat with you. If you want to do it that way, you can do it over the phone, on Zoom. He gives presentations all over the world for, life lessons that he's accumulated over all these experiences he's had voyaging and making passage aboard his West Sail 32. He's sailed around the world solo, nonstop, 2017 to 2018 aboard his boat, the Mighty Sparrow. He's learned some things. He's done all sorts of other journeys. Plus, he was a sailing instructor, and his resume is extensive. So definitely check him out. But I had already paid a 50% deposit for his time to come in early June. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this stuff is never going to get done. And, I don't want to have hired him to come help me fix a crack on the keel. Okay. The whole idea is that stuff's got to get done ahead of time so that when he does get here, we're spending our time out sailing and learning techniques, how to heave to, or anchoring in off Julian Bay and Stockton Island, or let's practice reefing and unreefing the mainsail, and whatever. There's so many things. Other things I wanted to look at with him: basic engine maintenance and understanding my new electrical system on board the boat, because I have a lot of stuff going on there that I we're not just talking a couple cabin lights. There's a refrigerator and automatic bilge pumps, all these things that I don't have on any of the other boats that I have. And so, I would love to have someone that's extremely experienced be able to sit down and say, hey, let's go over all these things and let's just get you acquainted and help you prepare so that, when you start venturing out on your own, you're going to feel like you have a bit of a grasp on these things and you're just not out there wondering, okay, now what do I do? Because I'm just going to tell you, I know I'm no ocean sailor, and what have you, but I did have a lot of experience growing up sailing. So I do know some things, but when you're the person who's responsible for the boat, that changes things dramatically. Your role changes dramatically as from crew to captain. And so these are things, you take your ASA 101 course, which I did. You take your ASA 103 course, which I did. You read these books. I've read tons of books. I've watched tons of videos, but nothing really can replace the actual hands-on experiences that you get when you're out on the water, especially when you're out on the water with your own boat that you're going to be able to come back to either, day after day, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, or weekend after weekend, like I typically do with my Com-Pac 23 Charm. And with this boat, this Com-Pac 25, I'll be lucky if I can get up there once a month. So yeah, it's an 8-hour trip to get there. But if I want to grow as a sailor, I felt that these are things that are necessary to do. I will tell you that I literally had something hit me upside the head that changed my perspective about things. I had finished a bike ride and stopped at a gas station to fill my car up. It was super gusty that day. I looked into what the gusts were at that point in the day, and it said that they had been 36 miles per hour. And what happened is that as I was pumping my gas, those advertisement signs that are affixed to the top of the gas station, those signs that say, get your 99 cents cup of coffee and a, English muffin for free or something. One of those things blew off and literally hit me in the back of the head while I was pumping my gas. I'll admit, when it first happened, I felt like, oh my God, who the hell saw that? Because I feel like a freaking idiot. like America's Funniest Videos thing sort of thing. But then I realized, like, holy crap, the back of my head fricking really hurts, man. What the hell was that thing? And I'm looking around me, and then I see this sign laying next to me on this left side, like kind of near the left front tire of my car. And I'm like, oh my God, that thing fricking hit me in the back of my head, man. That blows. So I didn't feel dizzy. I wasn't lightheaded. I wasn't seeing stars. And I used to ride horses, and I've fallen off of horses. And so I know what happens when you get hit upside the head and things aren't right. But this time around, aside from the pain in the back of my head that I had, I didn't feel discombobulated. So I pretty much ascertained I should be okay to continue to drive my car. And I didn't feel, incapacitated in any shape or form. So I did finish pumping the gas. I went inside and reported what had happened to this young man who was clerking at the register, and he could have cared less. He never asked me if I was okay. I guess he figured I was because I was standing there talking to him. But, when somebody tells you something like that happens, usually as a business employee, it might be nice to say, hey, are you all right? And so I was telling him, look, there's this giant sign out here. You got to get it out of the way, because it was about, I'd say 3 feet long, about 2 feet tall by 2 feet wide, and it was made out of metal and sheet metal. So I thought, I'm not moving their property. They can come move it. And he told some other young woman to come out to help me. And she did apologize about the incident, but she also did not say, hey, are you all right? And that whole experience with getting hit upside the head was kind of an awakening for me. Not only just like, okay, when it's windy outside, make sure that the signs that are advertising hot coffee for 99 cents don't hit you in the head while you're pumping your gas. And also, good thing it didn't hit me in the head while I was paying for my gas, because it would have hit me right in the face. And that would not be fun either. So, like with the boat, because I'm circling back to that, I said, I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't do it. I got to get out. I'm selling the boat. This is too much. Nobody's getting back to me. I'm not going to be ready when Jerome gets here. I was crazy to think that I could buy a boat that's 8 hours away and actually take care of the boat, enjoy the boat, because you have to also understand I'm a farm owner, and the lifestyle that I lead, managing and taking care of running the farm, sort of conflicts with the life of a sailing cruiser. So as much as I would love to have time to be able to go cruising for a long weekend or a whole 2 weeks, what have you, that for me is pretty much next to impossible. But there are a couple of people that I've been able to ask for assistance for caring for the farm sort of thing when we can sneak away up to Lake Superior for a few days, which is basically what we were hoping or banking on that we could do. Well, it turns out that some of those people that helped us last year really aren't available this year. So, who can predict that sort of thing? You really can't 6 months in the past. You just don't know. But we were willing to take that risk. We were willing to say, we will buy this boat. It meets our needs. It's what we're looking for. Although I will say I was actually looking for a bit larger boat in the, like I said, low 30s, 31 footer, 32, somewhere in there. But it seemed like the logical thing to do. I know Com-Pacs. I've had, how many have I had? 4 of them up until this boat. Now I have had 5. And so I was really happy to stay in the Com-Pac family. Getting the 25 felt like, okay, maybe this isn't quite as risky because it's not quite as big of a boat. And, we can learn some things and then take those skills and maybe one day get an even bigger boat. But you know what? I just was like, I'm out. I can't do this. This isn't going to happen. You know, the bubble has been burst. I don't know. I wasn't ready to do it anymore, and I just wanted to get out. So you know what I did? I called a broker, told him that I wanted to sell the boat, and he's like, "Yeah, I can help you do that." And so he sent me the paperwork, and I thought, you know what? This is going to be a pain in the butt because the paperwork was extraordinarily long, but that's just the nature of the business and the way it goes. And I thought, I'm doing the right thing, you know? And I thought to myself that even more so because I had recently taken the tarp off of my Com-Pac Legacy, which is just shy of 17 feet. And that was on the heels of watching this amazing video y'all gotta check out, especially if you're trailer sailors, because this gentleman and his wife drove from Washington, D.C. up to Lake Superior. And they had a Siren 17 sailboat. And they trailered this little boat up to Lake Superior, and they were cruising around the Apostle Islands and then also on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and just visiting these fantastic, amazingly beautiful locations with their sailboat. And he documented it in this 60-minute video, which just got me so pumped up to go back to Lake Superior this season and explore the Apostles. And I thought, oh my God, that is so cool that he's doing it on this little boat, this little 17-foot sailboat. It blew my mind again. So yeah, definitely check this out. I'll put a link in the podcast notes, but the name of the video, it's called Exploring Lake Superior on a 17-foot sailboat. And the YouTube channel is called La Sirène. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. My French is very rusty. La Sirène Adventures and Trailerable Sailboats is the name of the YouTube channel. So yeah, getting back to the paperwork, I felt, again, like I was doing the right thing. And I would just, you know what, I'll just enjoy the other two boats that I have. I can take the Legacy wherever I want to go because the boat is so easily to trailer and rig her. You know, literally I can do it in like a half hour or less with getting the mast up, getting her in the water and start sailing. I mean, that easy peasy. The 23, I'm like, yeah, we'll keep her in the slip again. And, you know, we could try the overnight thing again. Maybe we might be a little cramped, but it's only one night. Big deal. Suck it up. So that was the plan. But I got to this part where it talks about your registration and your title for the boat, and you got to copy it and send it to the broker so that you can prove ownership, which I'm glad that they asked for that because personally, I know lots of horror stories where other sailor friends of mine have been like, yeah, they didn't even have the boat registered, you know, or, oh my God, they didn't even have a title for it. So it's just, you know, always good to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And so I got my title and my registration for the Com-Pac 25, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wait a minute, what's going on with this hull identification number? This is different from what this says. And I'm going back and forth between these things, and I'm like, okay, which one is it? Because there were actually 3 different versions of the number, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So I got out my survey that I had done before we purchased the boat, and in the survey, they take a picture of the transom where the hull identification number, or HIN, is located, usually on the starboard side of the transom near the rub rail or tow rail area. And I looked at the number there and compared it. And so I was like, oh yeah, so what I had for my insurance matched what that said. So that was good. I was really glad for that because I had thought, oh my God, what if that was messed up and then something had happened to the boat up in this past winter? They probably wouldn't have covered me. And, you know, it started that whole ball of events rolling in my mind. And so I called the folks that are responsible for registering and titling boats in my state and explained the situation. There seems to be some typos and I'm trying to sell my boat. And, you know, I have to have proof of ownership, And they're like, no problem. You know, just get a picture of the HIN, bring it on down to us and we'll update it for you. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. That sounds easy enough. So because the boat's 8 hours away up in storage and shrink wrapped right now, I can't just take a picture of the hen on the boat. But again, like I said, I had the official survey with the photo of the hen. So I figured, well, what's the difference, whether it's printed in this document or if it's on my phone and I print it out or whatever, same difference, right? Actually, I thought it would be better to have it in the survey because that's an official document. Well, I get there and the two ladies are looking at me at the counter, and one of them is all, well, I don't know that this is a legitimate document. And she's questioning it. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And then the other woman she's more reasonable about things. And I'm trying to explain to her, look, I don't know why this happened. And then it turns out that because the person I bought the boat from also resided in the same state as me, he had somehow misread the hull identification number, because I'll be honest, when you look at those, oftentimes, sometimes because of the age of the boat, the numbers, the engraving is sometimes difficult to read. So where it was a T, he thought it was a J. And then somehow, I don't know how, but somehow a 3 became a 2. And I don't know how that. Usually a 3s are easily differentiated between a 2, but I don't know. But so at any rate, the one woman's given me the business about how I'm basically behaving nefariously, or I have something nefarious in mind and I'm trying to falsify, documentation or something, which was really, I was very offended by that, but I tried to just be cool because I needed to get this document, fixed from these people. And so they ended up deferring to the Department of Natural Resources and made a phone call, and they were all, just go ahead and fix it. So thank goodness, because that would have been a major CF, and I think you know what that stands for, but I don't want to, although I do swear like a sailor in person, oftentimes I try to keep it as clean as I can on this show. But at any rate, that all worked out. So why does that all matter? Well, it just so happens timing is everything. I firmly believe in that. I had just been listening to a podcast literally that same day, earlier in the morning, before this whole hen debacle unfolded in front of my eyes. And it was bringing up Jerome again. It was his podcast, and it was episode number 330 that just came out, I don't know, a couple days ago, maybe 3 days ago. And it's called Getting Back Up on the Horse and Out of the Rut. And it's just an amazing podcast that, Jerome basically talks about, well, what in the heck do you do when you feel like the walls are closing in around you and like you are trapped and there's nowhere to go? What can you do to get yourself free of this? And there's, different strategies for different folks. And sometimes what certain people say will work, other times it won't. And I just kind of think it's one of those things where we only know if we can just try for ourselves as individuals to see what strategies work for us. And I oftentimes will find that the way that Jerome sort of breaks down or analyzes challenges in life and how he works through them and how he, develops strategies to get past these challenges or are usually in the frame of how I can learn from them. And I think because you change your sort of outlook from the why am I struggling with this to, well, how can I learn from this? And it's kind of like when you make that shift in your mind, you kind of start to see where there could be, ironically, something positive that comes from this disturbing situation. So, and then the other thing that I will say, which I know is going to sound like hocus pocus or hokey or whatever the word is you want to use for it, but I am also of the frame of thinking where I do look for, if you will, divine interventions or signs and things like that. I mean, I'm not going to go overboard with it, pardon the pun, but I do believe that there is such a thing as these things that happen in our life that don't just happen by coincidence, that they can serve as a tool or as something that's a little push, if you will, to maybe to get you to make a change, or, whatever. That little intuition thing that you get, like when you think something is dangerous and you're like, listening to your gut feeling, sort of a thing. So this situation with the hen, after listening to this episode with Jerome talking about how to get out of a rut, and my rut being that I just was determined that the only solution for me to get rid of this weight on my shoulders was to sell the damn boat. Just get rid of the boat and then I can move on with my life. I'll just trailer sail the Legacy, a weekend or a day sail on my 23. You know what? It seemed like a great idea at the time, but what is that saying? Hindsight is 2020, da 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 da. Well, that is what I kind of sort of chalked it up to until this all happened with the hen. So I realized I needed to reevaluate. I needed to take a long, hard look at what it was that I was doing and why I was doing it. And you know what? The reason why is really what's most important. And that is because I was afraid. I was afraid of all these different things happening. Afraid of, we just wasted a bunch of money on buying this boat. Afraid that I just, spent money to book someone to come help us with the boat, and now we're not going to be able to even do what we wanted to do. Or afraid that I can't take care of these projects on my own, and I don't like not being able to be independent. That's another huge thing that I learned from this situation. Something that I never really thought about. And I'm just going to be honest, especially as a female sailor, okay? Because it is hard. Oftentimes people, when I call or whatever, they don't always take me as seriously. And I don't want to say like I'm completely blaming it all and things like that. But I will say that I have run into challenges like that. But because I am so passionate about having sailing in my life, I get past that. I don't really care. I don't give a, what, because to me, doing what I love to do is far more important than worrying about how somebody else perceives me doing what I love to do. So yeah, it is intimidating for me when I don't know how to fix my diesel engine because of X, Y, or Z. It is intimidating to me to think about having to go up the mast to change the wind indicator. There's all sorts of things that are intimidating for me, but fear is not a reason, I don't believe. And I know this from before, multiple times throughout my life when other things have happened that make me force the issue with this same thing of fear and how it is an obstacle for me. I spent the time, I did the research. We had an idea, and sure, maybe things aren't going to unfold exactly how we thought they would, like clockwork. That's not how life works. And I know that. I know better. But those things are not a reason to give up the ghost. And on that note, there was a little thing that also happened, which is I have this book that I think of it as kind of almost like a little guidebook of life of sorts. It's a book by Richard Bach. It's called Illusions. I read it in college and recently, brought it back into my library because I don't know where my, edition from college, where it went. That's been so many years ago. But I love just thumbing through that book from time to time because there's all these really interesting quotes and just, I don't know, life lessons, if you will. But the quote that I actually found today was about like your desires and your wishes in life, and then about how they're purposeful and meaningful, and they shouldn't be ignored. But it goes on to tell you that you may have to work for it to make it happen. So I think that's rather poignant because that is very, very true. And I don't have the book here right in front of me, and I meant to have that to read directly the quote to you. I'll put it in the video description notes, but it's so true. I've always believed that, you don't necessarily just get it handed to you and everything's going to be hunky-dory. You may have these dreams. You may have these desires, these wishes that you've always wanted to see come to fruition in your life. Well, my friend, yeah, sometimes, well, actually for me all the time, you got to work for it, And I think that's what makes it all the more sweeter, at least for me. When I look back and I think about all these times when I finally, that thing is realized in my life, and I think, yeah, it might have been a bear to get through all of that, to get to here, but man, it was so worth it. So I know that even though I had these extreme doubts, to the point where I was literally filling out the paperwork to sell my Com-Pac 25, I came away from that whole experience with the hull identification number, with happening to hear that podcast by Jerome and the timing of it. And it just made me realize, oh my God, you are such an idiot. What are you doing? This is, you can sit there and chastise yourself all that you want after the fact, but I feel so liberated now. I feel so happy. Like, oh my God, now I finally figured out this whole thing and like why I was in this rut, why I was doubting myself so much. It's easy for me to do that. It's something I struggle with so much in my life. That's just part of my journey for me personally. But I'm not going to give up. No, I'm not giving up my dream to sail on Lake Superior, to explore the Apostle Islands, to become a better sailor, become more educated, to become a safer sailor, to be able to share what I learn with other people if they want to hear what I have to say, which when that happens, that feels pretty good because truth be told, I'm a teacher by trade and education, and it feels amazing to be able to help other people. That's why I like to do it too. Again, getting back to that connection with others. So yeah, I'm marching forward. I will be up in Lake Superior at the end of April, and we will take the shrink wrap off of the boat. And we're going to start working on her and getting her ready. And we'll do what we can do to get her prepared for splashing, which as of now is scheduled for probably mid-May if the weather holds for us. I'm going to be splashing Charm next weekend. I'm going to be working on her this weekend to get her ready for that. And because she's at the lake where she sits on her trailer, shrink wrapped currently. And then I just took the tarps off of my Legacy a few days ago, and I've started working on her, getting her ready. And one of the things I kind of figured out too is sometimes when you think about that list of things to do and it looks like this giant mountain in front of you and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all the way up here when I'm all the way down here? And I think this is something else that Jerome once said in a podcast about, just taking that first step, putting one foot forward. And the first foot forward for me with Legacy, Charisma is my Legacy's name, taking the tarps off. Done. Okay. Folded, put away till next time. Done. Then the next thing, take out the hatch boards, drop boards, wash boards, whatever you want to call them. Let's see where we are. Let's see how we made out over the winter. Unfortunately, everything was nice and dry, I was expecting that, but sometimes you just never know, right? I had double tarps, but you just never know. And everything was dry. And I'm starting on the interior of the boat first and vacuumed everything out. Boom, done. That's off the list. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to wipe the entire insides down. I got some multi-purpose cleaner to get rid of those black scuff marks and whatever else is on there because I bought the boat in the fall of 2023. I never sailed her. She just sat in my driveway all last year afterwards because I was too busy up in Lake Superior boat shopping and whatnot or sailing on Charm. But I'm getting my act together, people. I'm getting my act together. I'm getting this boat ready to go. So yeah, that's where I am for now. And I'll just close by saying, I want to thank you all again for just being so supportive and making me feel so not alone and like, what the heck am I doing? And, I learned so much from all of you and what you're doing, and just being able to kind of be doing it together. Just even though we may not know each other or see each other personally or face to face or whatever, it's just for me a kind of a comforting thing, a happy place when I think about how other people are out there, getting their boats ready too, and they're all super stoked to get out in the water, just like I am. And there's something about that really just fills you with energy and makes you all the more determined and focused on getting to that place you want to be, which is out on the water. So thanks for listening. Be sure to check out my website, again, at passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com. I write blogs on there pretty regularly, and I would really love to see some people stop by and raft up with me there as well. Until next time, you know what I say, fair winds. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for more sailing adventures from Passages from the Heart this sailing season. If you are liking this podcast series, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. Also, please consider stopping by for a visit at my website at www.passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com. Until next time, fair winds.